Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Aspie Bridge. This is a shared journey for understanding. It creates community in all of us. And when we work together to help get the information out about what autism is and how people can have special strengths, not just challenges, they can become a better person to go across our bridge. And today I'd like to welcome back a wonderful dear friend of mine and my autism expert, who I'm going to let her introduce herself and how autism has impacted her life. And then we're going to go in and I'm going to explain how we're going to go with this new podcast. I hope you enjoy this new series. It's really going to be exciting and it gets you the information right away. Yes, you can still sign up with a bridge builder to have some special time, but the emphasis of the Aspie Bridge 2.0 is to get you the answers now that you need. And that is a big thing. So, without further ado, Wendy, welcome back. I love having
Well,
you on my podcast.
Suzanne, it's lovely to be here as always, meeting you on the bridge.
We have a bridge of freedom right behind us.
Yes,
It
yes.
takes you places. Tell us a little bit about your background, Wendy, for anyone who may not know you.
Well, sure. Um, for 20 years, I was a special ed teacher. For the next 20 years, I was a school psychologist, licensed educational psychologist, um, got some more training, and I did assessment for my county Office of Education. I did autism assessment for toddlers, like 1.5 to 4 year olds. For the last 10 years, that's what I did all day, every day was assessing little people, working with their parents, their teachers. I loved that. But then I retired back in 2016. And when I left the world of the schools, I realized, the kids are going to be okay. There are a lot of programs, there are IEPs, and that there are a ton of books for parents of autistic kids. So I turned to working with adults. Now, part of that was my late husband and two of our three children were all diagnosed as autistic later in life as adults. I'd been working with children and I didn't recognize that I was living with autistic people because late diagnosed people look very different from autistic toddlers. It just doesn't look like the same thing. So I didn't know, but I learned. So I started writing books. I love writing books. I've got about 10. Some of my favorites are Recognizing Autism in Women and Girls and the 5 book series Adulting While Autistic. I've got 5 different aspects of adulting in that book series.
I
And
love that
most,
book series.
oh, I'm so glad. We never know if people are reading the books or not. It's like, thanks. And I just started my own podcast, and thank you for guesting with me. It's called Amplifying Autism. And we're, interviewing autistic folk. I've interviewed Temple Grandin, Devin Price, Suzanne Plumley, and just as a chance, because I'm not autistic. I'm quirky, maybe. I have some similarities, which may be why my husband and I got along so well, but I'm not actually autistic. So I guess it's like being bilingual.
A great way to put it. Yes. Yes, and in fact, I'm doing an article all about that we can process information when we understand and we listen to people. It is like a different language because do have different processing needs, but when you can listen with your heart, as I just heard someone say, that is the way to communicate, not with your ears all the time.
Yes. And I just realized I forgot to even say my name. You call me Wendy because we're friends. But on my books, it will say Wendell Whitcomb Marsh because that's my grown-up name,
That
my,
is
my
your
official name.
professional name. And yes,
But
I do
but
want
call
to
me
give
Wendy.
credit to that so that people can look for your books.
Yeah, because if you
Oh,
just look for Wendy, who knows how many Wendy's there are writing books?
that's very true. Very true. Oh, Wendy, thank you for coming back.
Oh, it's good to
Now,
be here.
I have a share with Wendy, and I want to share with all of you a very special series that I've created. Now, many of us who are autistic are visual learners. And so I know there are some of us who are also enjoy reading comic strips because they get the point across in a short snippet of frames instead of reading a book that has longer pages and everything. So I decided that the best way to help express the lessons was through a comic strip. But it's not comic funny, it's just comic format. So I would love to share this, and then Wendy and I will discuss what's going on in the cartoon series and the frames, and then we'll go into our discussion on late diagnosis for autistic individuals. And my character in here, you will learn, is in fact a late diagnosis. Wendy, are you ready to share
I'm ready. Roll the
Okay.
cartoon.
All right. In this, we have Dr. Grace and Ellen, who's a college student. I'd love you to read this. It goes pretty slowly so you can see what it says. According to this, Dr. Grace is telling Ellen all about why she is, well, what constitutes her as being part of the spectrum. And Ellen wants to know, she finds out that she's not broken. Isn't that right, Wendy?
Yes, a lot of people I've known have felt like there was something wrong with them when it was just that they had a different kind of brain. Nothing wrong with it. It's just unique.
Exactly. Dr. Grace knows that Coach Suzanne, can help Ellen because I've lived through the experiences. And so Dr. Grace has referred Ellen to me to help Ellen to learn some of these lessons.
I think it's so important to have a coach who is autistic themselves because you don't have to explain what autism is to them. They really get it.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So, as you can see by the cartoon, Ellen is quite, wow, I'm autistic. What does that mean? What do you want to add to this, Wendy?
Well, when I have been the one to tell someone that, yes, they are autistic, often they do feel relief, euphoria. Sometimes there's sadness because they think about how much they've been beating themselves up, or they think about how they've been treated badly for just being autistic. You know, the things that they were doing that were interpreted as misbehavior were really just attempts to communicate. So there can be a process of forgiving oneself, forgiving other people. But the important takeaway is there is nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. And that's the new thing to learn about yourself.
That's great. Do you find that the comic strip might make it easier for late diagnosed individuals to better self-reflect?
I agree with you that so many autistic people are very visual and love. I mean, Temple Grandin, thinking in pictures. Um, and I find it interesting to watch the hand drawing it. I just think that's entertaining, and one can read it at one's own pace and digest it. Plus, you can go back and watch it again to really get the message.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that format I think it's a good one.
It's quick too, so it allows time to read without it being an hour's worth of reading time, and you'll get the
Yes.
lessons. And as I was telling Wendy, I'm up to series episode 9, so please stay tuned each week as we go through this. Next week, Teresa Garvin and I are going to be talking about masking and the effect of choosing to mask during different situations. But I'm going to leave that for next week. Let's
Yeah,
get
that'll
back,
be good.
Wendy, to talking about late diagnosis. What is late diagnosis? For me, I know that the fact that I did not hear the word autism, now granted, I have to tell you, in all honesty, the schools didn't have the word. And Wendy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. My older daughter in 1999 went to preschool. And that was the first time I had heard autism in our small neighborhood. We had two boys, 5 years old, that were going to be part of her classroom, and the schools were starting to be a part of that. That's 1999. I was born in the late 60s. You can understand that autism wasn't part of the education field, it wasn't part of the medical field, and still some therapists are having a hard time with understanding what late diagnosis is. For me, late diagnosis starts from the age of college. And Wendy, you put it well with saying there's no IEP in college. There are no given resources in college. There are communities, however. So I do ask you to reach out to your college community and see what services they might be able to offer. And as we go through the comic strip, you'll see some other ideas of what you can do as a late diagnosis. Wendy, what would you like to add to the late diagnosis? And what do you think it there may have been a reason why some may have been missed. I went over the fact that it wasn't a word till 1999, but maybe there are some other signs you can say that people were missed off the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, it did have the word autism back in the day, but most people, just like schools and general doctors, it wouldn't be thinking about that. It was like 1 in 10,000. You weren't going to actually meet anyone. But the original description of what it means to be autistic required that the person should have significantly delayed language and a cognitive delay, what they used to call mental retardation. And now we don't call it that. But if you developed language typically, if you were as smart as the next kid, you could not be called autistic, no matter how many other characteristics you had of autism. They couldn't give you that label. But when that shifted and they said, oh, a whole lot of people are actually autistic and smart. Also, if you were a girl, you were more likely to quietly mask and imitate others and not be noticed. And people would just say, oh, she's just shy. She's just quirky. She's just interested in the things she's interested in. So a
Right.
lot of,
For a
yeah,
really quick thing, the other thing is that so many girls, women from the 1950s on were trained in family social pleasantries. You
yes,
keep eye contact, you say please, and you say thank you, all regardless of how the child actually felt. They were trained, girls were trained how to be polite in public, which is a
yes.
masking
It
technique.
is, it's masking. And many, many women in particular, but also men, as adults, their kids were diagnosed as autistic, and they were like, well, that's just like me when I was a kid. And then it's like, oh, and some even grandparents.
Mhm.
The late diagnosed can be very late, 50s,
Yes.
60s, 70s. I heard about one a man who was diagnosed in his 80s. He was in a elder care facility, and they diagnosed him as autistic. And his autistic daughter and granddaughter were like, "Oh yeah, that's true."
I have to say that I question oftentimes when my father and my grandmother, if they might have been, if the diagnosis had been around, because I am just like both of them. And so I wonder now, autism definitely wasn't around when they were growing up either, obviously. So we'll
Uh,
never know,
they
unfortunately. But
wouldn't have qualified. Yeah, they would never have heard the word because they weren't one of the few psychologists who studied it, who knew about it. And even they wouldn't have recognized it because, if you're smart, you couldn't be autistic until more recently.
exactly. And my dad did very well in math. It was a structured format. And a lot of people, Temple Grandin said in one of your things, a lot of people have the aptitude to go into maths and sciences who are
Yeah,
autistic. And
yeah,
that is, That's fabulous. That's what we're heading for. And that's what this bridge is heading for, is to help
Yes.
you to find those strengths, to say,
Yeah.
yes, I love that. I would love to do that. And that's where your powers, your strengths can override some of the challenges. And the bridge is here to help you with the other challenges that you're having. Now, Wendy,
Absolutely.
you said something that was very interesting. I'd like to just put in euphoria is was my expression. And
Yes.
I just want to say when someone recognized that I was autistic back in my 51st year of life, I was euphoric. And I like to say that my brothers were considered the Fuji apples of my family, and I was the red delicious. Now, as soon as I found out that I was autistic, I was no longer a red delicious apple. I went up to be a green apple, a person all of my own value. And that's
Yes.
one way, metaphorically, literally, to think about it. You're no
Yeah.
longer a less than apple, you're now a green delicious apple.
Yeah. Just a different apple, different tree, but we're all apples.
Exactly. Exactly. So we're not Martians, as some folks would like to
Yeah.
say. You're not from another world. Yes, we have differences, but we're still part of the same family. So
Yes.
let's go on to say, when actually, Wendy, have you recognized some other people who, or other traits where people were elated when their traits were now explained?
Yes. People have been really relieved, to the point of tears. And they're often going into an assessment. Many people have fear and trepidation. It's like they're spending a lot of money. And what if, after all the research I've done online and all the books I've read and all the people I've followed on social media and how sure I am, if this professional person says, no, you're not, it would be devastating. So there's a lot of anxiety going into that. And to get you were right about yourself, you. And now you have a piece of paper and all this documentation that proves that you were right all along. I can see why that would be euphoric.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go on. That's a great segue to label or peace of mind. For
That,
me, it was a peace of mind. And I can tell you that I don't use the word label. And Wendy, I'd love to have you go from here in a moment. I use the word explanation. So if I don't hear you correctly and I answer you funny, or I'm twiddling my thumbs, or I'm twirling my hair, or I'm acting in a way that you might think is different, having the explanation ahead of time that I'm autistic may grant you the grace to say, I understand. But if I didn't say I was autistic and I may have been doing different actions that you might find different or weird, you'd wonder. So by using the fact that I say out front, yes, I am autistic, it now puts people at ease because they don't have to wonder if I know or
yeah.
wonder what's wrong. Go ahead, Wendy. What would you like to add?
Yeah. I think labels are only as useful as the doors they open. When someone is in school, a label can open the door to services that they would not have been able to access without a label. It can also open the door to understanding, as you were talking about, for people to just get it and say, oh, and give you some more grace, some more patience, some more explanation, and being clear instead of assuming that you're going to read my facial expression, to actually say what I mean to you because now I know that you're autistic. But not everyone is comfortable. And some people I've talked to during like a political climate might feel like people will use that label against them. And they don't want their label known. But knowing within themselves that they're autistic, even if they've self-identified, they don't have to spend a ton of money to get someone else to tell them, and maybe to tell them they're not. Um, but but to know within yourself to self-identify as autistic is valid. People there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of free online tests. There's a lot of books to read. So people can know about themselves if they're autistic. And if they need accommodations, um, now if a person wants to get like government assistance as a disabled person, they will need a formal diagnosis from,
Mhm.
a clinical psychologist or whoever it is in your state that does that kind of thing. That there's no guarantee that they will get benefits
No.
just because they have that piece of paper, but there's no way they will get it if they don't have a piece of paper. And also, either in college or at work, if you need accommodations, having a piece of paper, they might be more likely to give you the accommodations. But that doesn't mean that they wouldn't give it to you otherwise. You could go to your supervisor and say, I do my best work if I'm not distracted by sounds because I have really sensitive hearing. So it helps me to wear noise canceling headphones. I'm not listening to the ball game or a podcast. I'm just blocking out noise. And that helps me do the best job I can. They want to hear that you're doing good work. They don't want to just hear that it's because I'm more comfortable, it's because I like it. That might be true. But what they want to hear is I'm a better worker when I can focus on my job. And this helps me. And if I'm not asking my boss to go out and buy me headphones, because I'm not, because they won't, then it seems unlikely that they would say no. It seems to me that you should be able to advocate for yourself, whether it's the lighting. And I think the very best accommodation that I wish everyone could have, and sadly, not everyone can have it, is working from home. If you have the kind of job where you can work from home or hybrid, at least part-time, then you control the sensory and social environment. Now, that might be a case where you would need to say, I am autistic and I will do great work for you if nobody is walking down the hall and stopping in and saying hi and chatting by the coffee place. If I can just sit at my computer and do my job, I am so productive. Um, for that, you might need a diagnosis on paper, but you might not. I would say try it. And especially, I know it's been a while since the global pandemic shut down, but at that time, a lot of autistic people that I met and that came to me were so productive at their job. They just, they surpassed all of whatever the goals that are set. And when they came back, it was actually worse for them than before. And they burned out quickly and they couldn't do their job. Now, if you can show this is how much, I produced during, when I was working for home, and this is how much I'm producing now, then you can make a case for it. But you have to be, for some of them, you have to be able to show that you can do it or offer to do a trial. Let me see if I can do more work for you from my house. And of course, not every job can be,
No,
there's
those
a,
are my Starbucks years, and I was working at the drive-through. But even then, that was a nice job for me because I was in
Mhm.
one location. We were talking about accommodations. I had a nice mat
Yes,
under my feet for
good.
anti-fatigue, and I was
Yeah.
able to help customers at a distance. So all of those things worked for me, but you need to know who you are. Now, Wendy,
Yes.
you did some great segue into is it cost effective and should I go for the actual formal diagnosis or not? I have what is considered a 3/4 diagnosis, which means I did sit through a 2.5 hour analysis of a comparison going through the DCM with a licensed psychologist. And so I
Yeah.
found that that was something that my insurance was willing to pay to
Good.
have someone go through the DCM with me and decide whether or not I had enough of the traits. Now,
Okay.
that doesn't give me automatic services. So, as Wendy
True.
was saying, you need to decide whether or not or how much you need those accommodations. Because if you're not formally uh, addressed, if you don't have what I originally called the card or the statement or the certification saying that you are or you're not, then you're not going to have as much success with the supervisor getting those accommodations as you would be if you are formally diagnosed. Now, the diagnosis is not an inexpensive venture for someone who's late diagnosed. And sadly,
Yeah.
when you're already underemployed, perhaps, or unemployed because of other disabilities, you need to weigh whether or not that actual certificate is going to be lucrative enough for you to make the cost effective. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Wendy. What would you like to add to that?
Well, it is difficult because it's hard to know when you go into it if you're paying all this money to someone who really has a lot of experience with late diagnosed autistic adults, especially women, non-binary, trans. Um, if they don't really understand how to look behind the mask, it can be tricky. There might be a question like they might ask, do you have a problem with the social interactions? Well, some people might say, might think to themselves, I don't have a problem with it. I just avoid social interactions. Or I have a script and a system, a routine for social interactions. In each case, they might say, no. Now, that's not the whole answer. But they were asked a yes or no question. Or do you have trouble with eye contact? They might be thinking, I avoid eye contact, or I don't have a problem. I just look at the eyebrows or the bridge of the nose. Or they might say, I have a system for look at the eyes for 3 seconds, look away for 2 seconds, look back for three, counting in my head while we talk. But the answer is no, I don't have a problem with that. Or do you have stims like flapping your hands? And they might think, boy, I flapped my hands all the time when I was a child, but then I learned how not to do that. So now I bite my cheeks and I jiggle my leg and
Twiddle my thumbs.
twiddle my thumbs. But the answer is going to be no. And if the person interviewing them does not know to ask follow-up questions, then they're just going to check off a box saying, nope, nope, nope. Okay, you're not autistic. And the person is like, maybe really autistic, but masking so effectively. And it's exhausting, I know, isn't it?
It
Masking
is.
all the
It
time.
is. What's
Yeah.
really exhausting is when you have the invisible traits within you. And one of those invisible traits is an overstimulated nervous system that doesn't know how to find a baseline. And
Mm,
that is probably the hardest part for an autistic individual, particularly a woman who can go through life communicating, keeping contact, and people are like, what's wrong? What's the problem? Well, my nervous
yeah.
system is going 80 miles an hour. My heart rate is
Yeah.
beating faster than it should, not dangerously so, but faster. And so I
Yeah.
have what is an invisible trait that you can't see. That doesn't mean it doesn't have a value. Your nervous
Yeah.
system is a big part of your autism traits. And you need to speak up and say, I may be able to do XYZ, but you need to understand that there are a lot of invisible challenges I'm experiencing on a regular basis.
People don't realize if they don't know they're autistic that socialization that is like normal, if there's such a thing as normal, for everyone else at your work or wherever you're in your family, they can just socialize and chat and then just go out and do something else. And the next day they go to work. But for some people, it's exhausting and they are just so much energy focused on following the conversation because it's at a different sort of a timing than what my conversation would be. So now I have to really work at following. And if you have to go to a wedding, you really should maybe have 2 days off to recover from all that social and all that emotional. Even though it might be a wonderful occasion, it's you still need recovery time. And when you don't have it, that's when you feel your nervous system is like, and people burn out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I went to a conference 2 weeks ago and there was a lot of loud music, a lot of sensory overstimulation with lights. And if I had not been in a positive environment, it would have been a challenge. If it had been a concert or something that where people were not as supportive of who I was, it could have been a lot more challenging. So you do have to know what your sensory barrier is.
Yeah, and advocate for yourself. If you need to wear earplugs or loops or something to just, you can still hear, but it just tones it down. I mean, I wear them when I go to the movies because I think movies are too loud.
They can be,
Yeah,
yes.
so I'm not autistic, but I still always put my loops in before the movie starts.
Understood. I don't know how I got away with not listening to music. I think what I called them was micro bursts of autism chaos.
Oh, microbursts, yeah,
Microburst, which meant that at a concert, it's an all the whole time.
yeah,
Whereas where I was at was two songs and then quiet. So that's why I was able to work through the have fun and then know that quiet was coming. And when you know that you can expect quiet, it does make it easier to except the fun and the loud music that everybody else is enjoying. But take me to a concert with strobe lighting.
oh yeah, strobe lighting is the worst.
It is. But oh boy, let's bring this in for a landing, Wendy.
Okay.
On late diagnosed autistic individuals, what can they look forward to? I think for me, the fact that they have so many hidden strengths even though the family may not be accepting of it. And I do want to caution people know your family. Not all families are ready for you to say, I'm autistic, because that changes the entire way that they have worked with you. So you do have to know who is safe to share your information with.
Yeah. And
And
again, you can share parts of it, like I have very sensitive hearing, or I get exhausted from this or that kind of experience and I need to rest afterwards. Or I need advance notice if there's going to be any change of plans. You can't at the last minute say, well, now we're going to a different restaurant with different people, because then I'll just stay home. Um, and the people that you trust, and often autistic people that I've known in their circle of friends, there are other autistic people or other neurodivergent people, maybe ADHD, maybe ADHD. Um, and because they are drawn to people that they can relate to. So you might find that your chosen family of friends is more accepting and more open to it than maybe your birth family, depending on your birth family. Every family is different. And sometimes if you don't feel safe talking about it now, maybe later you will be. Maybe you just, leave a book around to see if they'll read it. Or say, have you
absolutely.
followed this comedian who turns out to be autistic? There's different ways people can learn about autism.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to know who's safe because your sensitivities matter. I
Yeah.
would get accused of being a deep thinker. I don't think that was a bad thing. For others, it may be. So you have to know who your safe people are. Is it worth getting a diagnosis or not? The diagnosis depends on two things. How comfortable are you with being having a label or an explanation attached to you? And is it cost effective such that your resources can be provided if you have the card? Those are some of the big considerations. Wendy, what would you like to add as your final words for this
Uh,
wonderful
yeah.
podcast?
Well, if you can afford it, or if you have a family or someone who can pay for the assessment and you really want that, paying for it out of pocket means that that information, when they give it to you, is your own and no one else's. They don't share it with anyone, and confidentiality is complete. If you go through your insurance, it will be in your record and you won't be able to take it out. So, if you don't necessarily want that in your record, and maybe you do because you want to be able to prove to people that there it is, it's right in my record, then yeah, you should go for it. And but if you want to keep that information for yourself, then private pay or self-identification. I respect self-identification. I don't know of anybody who just randomly says, "Oh, I'm going to say that I'm autistic." The people I know who self-identify spend a lot of time and research and self-examination, and they don't just randomly say, "I am autistic."
No.
They know themselves and they spend the time and put in the work to be sure of who they are, and that deserves respect and acknowledgement. I would say, of course, if you say you're autistic, absolutely, I believe you.
Yes. Oh, what an excellent point to end on, because I know for a fact that the trauma that comes when you're a child and growing up and not being understood can be a challenge. And when you've spent years self-reflecting on what's going on and why there are challenges, understanding that you're autistic is like having that weight lifted off your shoulders.
Yes.
And
Yeah. And
I
I
just,
always like to say, when someone finds out that they're autistic, congratulations.
yes.
Because, yeah, some of my favorite people are autistic. And so I see it as a positive thing.
I've always seen it as positive to mine, unless there are people who don't validate the fact that I am.
But
And
you
that's a
know who
big
you
thing,
are.
is knowing who you are is nobody else's business.
That's right.
So, Wendy, I want to say thank you for coming. This has been such a wonderful episode as usual. And I would like to say to everybody, thank you for coming to the Aspie Bridge, and know that we're going to have so many ideas and lessons that we can help you with right here on Tuesday mornings at 11 Central. I would love to have you subscribe, comment, let us know what your challenges are, because we can't know everybody's challenges. It's a spectrum. We all have different traits. And so
So
we'd
true.
love to be able to help you, but it does require that you come to the bridge and let us know what you would like help with. So I want to say thank you for now, and I hope you'll come back next week. Thank you, Wendy, for coming today.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's always great to meet you on the bridge.
Thank you.